Hey students, this is Miss Went, and I wanted to help you with page 5 of your packet. So this is called Working with Formulas. And what a formula is, I got an example of one right here. A formula is a shorthand symbol that tells you how many atoms are connected together. All right, so I'm actually going to draw a picture of what this thing looks like, H2O2. Okay, so H2O2. And the numbers are actually called subscripts right there. So sub, kind of like a submarine. They kind of hang out low and down, just like a submarine hangs out below the water. Okay, so H2O2 looks like that. And the real name for this is actually hydrogen peroxide, but we don't have to know that. So the subscripts tell me how many of each kind of atom I have hooked together. So if I was going to draw this guy, and this drawing is going to be really messy, I apologize for that, I would have 2 atoms of oxygen kind of hooked up together, and I would have 2 atoms of hydrogen hooked up as well. So it's going to look something like this. So each red circle represents an oxygen, and each green circle represents a hydrogen. And they might be hooked together in different ways and different orders. You'll learn more about that in college chemistry, of kind of the rules of how things hook together. Okay, so if I have H2O2, that means I have 2 hydrogen atoms and 2 oxygen atoms hooked together. So the subscript number goes with whatever's in front of it. So this 2 goes with the H's, this 2 goes with the O's. All right, so on your worksheet here, that's kind of what we have laid out. So the number of elements in the compound, how many different kinds of atoms there are. Well, I had 2 different kinds of atoms. I have hydrogen atoms and oxygen atoms. The H stands for hydrogen, the O stands for oxygen, and you can look those up on your periodic table. And the little subscript numbers told me I had 2 of each. And all together, if I add them together, my total would be 4. So my picture had 4 total circles, 2 red and 2 green. So that's what a formula tells you, what kind of atoms you have and how many. Okay, so let's look at another one here. So this formula says NaOH. And you notice that the A is lowercase. That tells me that's not its own element. The A goes with the N. Each element's going to have a capital letter. So actually, I have got 3 different elements here. I have the Na, I have the O right there, which is a capital letter, and I have the H, which is a different capital letter. So all together, I've got 3 different kinds of elements. Okay, so now I'm going to switch to typing here.
Yeah.
So down here, I would write Na, which I can look on the periodic table, that's sodium. And then I have O, which is going to be oxygen. And then I have H, which is hydrogen. And maybe you're starting to memorize some of these elements, and that's great if you can remember what some of the symbols stand for. All right. Now, in my formula up here, there were no subscript numbers, no little numbers. If something doesn't have a number, it's kind of like math class. We don't say 1x, we just say x. We don't need the 1. So each one of these guys had just 1 atom because there were no subscript numbers. So we don't have to write the 1 if in our formulas. It's just, if there's no number, we just know it's a 1. Okay. So this formula here, NaOH, is actually sodium hydroxide. That's the name of this guy. We have 3 different kinds of elements. Each one is represented by a capital letter. And because there's no subscript numbers, I have 1 of each. Okay. Well, let's look at another one here. So this guy up here, we do have a subscript number. So it looks like my elements, I have Mg, the G is lowercase, so it goes with the M. I have an S that's capital and an O that's capital. So I have got 3 different kinds of elements. Okay. The Mg, you can look up what that stands for. Okay. And then we have the S, and then we have the O. And hopefully you remember that O stands for oxygen. That's one that hopefully by the end of the week you'll have memorized. Okay. Now for our numbers, for this Mg, there is no subscript after the G. If there's no number, that means we just got 1. For the S, again, there's no number after the S, so we just have 1 of those. For the O, there's 4, a little 4 subscript there after the O, so I'm going to have 4 O's. Okay, so 4 plus 1 plus 1, all together, our total is going to be 6. Okay, now I'm going to skip down. This guy right down here, and I'm missing the lines there. Actually, let me go to another one because that one might be cut off of your paper. Nope, I guess we're doing this one. So this has some parentheses in it. Now, in math class, you have used these before. It's just going to look like it's backwards from what you're used to doing. Okay, so this 3 on the outside of the parentheses, we have to distribute that, just like you would do in math class. It's going to be for the N and for the H. Okay, so what that means is I still have, in this formula, I have some N's. Here, let me type it. It's going to be a little easier here. So I have some N's. I have some H's, I have some P's, and I have some O's. Okay, and if I need to figure out how many of each one I've got, if I look at my N here, there's no number after the N. So that means I have 1 N. But that 3 has to be distributed. Okay, so there's 1 N, whoops, up there, 1 N inside, and I have to multiply it by 3. So in reality, I have 3 N's. Okay. For the H, there's 4 H's inside, and I have 3 groups of them. So I'm going to have to distribute that. So 4 H's inside times the 3 on the outside, I actually have 12 H's altogether. Now this P and the O aren't part of the parentheses, so that 3 doesn't mean anything. There are no numbers behind the P, so that means I just have 1 of those. There's no subscript that goes with the P. For the letter O, there's a 4 after the O, so I have 4 O's in there. Okay. Now, if I'm going to draw this, so here's an N, and there's 1, 2, 3, 4 H's drawn to it. Okay, so that's what's inside the parentheses. Now, outside the parentheses, we had that number 3. I gotta draw 3 of those whole things. So here's another one. an N with 4 H's. Attached to it. And then here's another one over here, an N with 4 H's. 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, so that takes care of our 3 groups of N's. So you can see kind of how those parentheses work. It tells me that I have this thing called an N with 4 H's, and that little 3 means I have 3 groups of that thing. So 1, 2, 3 groups. And then I have 1 P, and I have 4 O's. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then somehow all of these things are connected to each other. And you'll learn about all the connections more later on in high school chemistry and college chemistry, okay? But that's what that means. The parentheses mean I had 3 of those groups, and then I also had 1 P and 4 O's that were kind of not part of those. All right, so I know this takes a little bit of getting used to, and you'll see lots of practice, okay? So this page is kind of the start of your practice. So I would like you to try to do pages 5 and 6. See how it goes and turn them in. And again, if you're not getting something, as always, please, please, please ask for help. And we can Zoom together and work our way through it. Or if you have a friend that's in the class and you want to work together, that's fine too. Okay? So work on pages 5 and 6, and then please hand them in when you're done. If you have any questions, let me know. Thanks, guys. Have a great day.